Forge Master of Fuses. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 426 Influence. Emelfield vomited until there was nothing in his stomach, and then he recovered. He rinsed his mouth and was about to say something when he saw Song-Si coming out with one of the metal pieces. Emelfield's stomach churned again, and a mouthful of yellow bile sprayed directly at Song-Si's boots. Song-Si dodged it with a hawk roll, and his sharp eyes shot at the culprit like an arrow. Emelfield was speechless, and reluctantly made an apology gesture to Song-Si, turned his head and continued to vomit. Song-Si raised his eyebrows, turned around and glanced at Xiao. The warning in his eyes was direct and strong. Xiao touched his nose, looked left and right, but didn't dare to look into Song-Si's eyes. Even so, he couldn't hide his guilty conscience in his eyes. How did it get out of hand? And he was caught by Song-Si. This is terrible. He still wants to get married. Oh. Xiao looked at his wife aggrievedly, and hinted to Song Tong with his eyes, asking her to say a few good words for him in front of her brother. Song Tong received the distress signal sent by Xiao, and understood the meaning of it, but she might not dare to do it. Others don't know, but she doesn't know. Her cheap brother is like a string bean, he won't eat anything. Song Tong really doesn't dare to do things like stroking tiger whiskers. Especially when Tang Fan is not there to smooth things over. The old saying goes, husband and wife are birds of the same forest, but they fly away when disaster strikes. She and Xiao are not even husband and wife now. So, she should keep silent. It's better to die a friend than to die a poor Taoist. Xiao, who was ruthlessly abandoned by his wife, was in a bad mood. Feeling the eye-to-eye dispute between Xiao and Song Tong, Song-Si couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. The uncomfortable feeling of the cabbage in my garden is eaten by the pig next door made Song-Si want to put everything aside and have a friendly match with Xiao to get closer. Anyway, Emelfield also needs some time to adapt to the current situation, and he can't ask anything for a while. Thinking of this, Song-Si couldn't help but hook his finger at Xiao. Xiao lowered his head and walked towards Song-Si in 3 steps. When he was about to reach Song-Si, a thin figure attracted Xiao's full attention. Master Tang, why are you here? Xiao's high voice and excited expression, as if he saw his reborn parents, made Tang Fan laugh and cry. I'm here to find Major General Song. I thought Xiao was stalling for time, but I didn't expect Tang Fan to really appear behind him and specifically asked for him. The slight anger on Song-Si's face disappeared all of a sudden, and his eyes and eyebrows softened immediately. He smiled and looked at Tang Fan, and said softly, is there anything I can do? Major General Song-Si's face-changing drama was particularly wonderful, and successfully attracted the group of people who were watching Emelfield's joke. Facing the teasing eyes of his brother, Song-Si, who has always been thick-skinned, couldn't help but blush. Fortunately, Tang Fan's attention was attracted by the batch of chips and he didn't notice it. While Song-Si breathed a sigh of relief, a faint regret surged in his heart. Such contradictory emotions successfully shocked Major General Song-Si. It turns out that Tang Fan's influence on him is so huge. Chapter 427 Hameo Kyosuke. Tang Fan successfully missed a famous scene where Major General Song-Si failed to manage his expression. He pinched his palm and spoke with difficulty. I want to borrow someone from you. Although Song-Si had a guess in his mind, he still asked, who? Tang Fan secretly glanced at Song-Si's livid face and carefully pointed at the glasses who were carefully observing the situation in front of the screen. I'll borrow it for a while. I'll return it to you as soon as the data analysis is completed. Tang Fan pressed his thumb on his little finger and raised the other 3 fingers, making an I swear look. Seeing Tang Fan's little look, who was afraid that he would not lend someone, Song-Si felt his back teeth itching, and he wanted to burn a hole in the back of the glasses with his eyes. Feeling Song-Si's hot eyes, the glasses who were listening to gossip with their ears erect could not help but shudder. The girl wanted to lead a professional like him to indulge in research together, so that he had no interest in love. Is it his fault? Is this considered a shot while lying down? Seeing the quarrel between brothers and the tense situation, Kyosuke Hameo suddenly became energetic. Nausea and vomiting could not stop his burning gossip soul. Kyosuke Hameo, who was used to vomiting, had already started to imagine an 80-episode bloody love triangle drama. Moreover, he laughed out loud at the plot he imagined. Kyosuke Hamao's obscene laughter successfully attracted the attention of Major General Song Si. Was he being treated as a joke? Major General Song, who was in a bad mood, silently made a heavy note in his little black book about Kyosuke Hamao with sly eyebrows and mustache. Just after finishing the account, Major General Song Si felt his sleeves fall slightly and moved automatically without wind. Major General Song, who could kill everything with his eyes, softened his cold eyes immediately after realizing what this meant. The girl he liked came to him in person to borrow her, and even pulled his sleeve to act coquettishly. What could he do? Of course he chose to spoil her. Anyway, there's nothing important recently, so I'll lend you the glasses for the time being. After getting Song Si's consent, Tang Fan immediately smiled sweetly at his cheat brother. Then, he took the glasses away at lightning speed. Before Song Si could recover from Tang Fan's smile, the girl disappeared in front of him again. This feeling was so sour that it was unbelievable. It was impossible to vent his anger on the girl. Song Si consciously put the blame on both glasses and Hamao Kyosuke. Glasses followed Tang Fan and could not be dealt with for the time being. But what about Hamao Kyosuke? If not now, when? I heard that Mr. Hamao Kyosuke is quite knowledgeable in close combat. I have admired him for a long time. I wonder if I could ask Mr. Hamao for some advice. Although Song Si's words were quite polite, coupled with his eyes looking him up and down and the disdain on the corner of his mouth, the taste suddenly changed. Song Si's behavior successfully stimulated Hamao Kyosuke. If it were in the Alliance territory, Song Si's identity as a major general of the Alliance and the son of a marshal was there, Hamao Kyosuke would definitely respect him, keep his distance, and lie down and let him be ridiculed. But in this place where birds shit and chickens don't lay eggs, they encountered mutant creatures and genetically modified humans one after another. Hamao Kyosuke, who didn't know if there would be a tomorrow, didn't want to endure it all of a sudden. Since this is a request from Major General Song, it's better to obey than to be respectful. It's better to do it now than to wait for a day. Chapter 428 Dumbfounded. Song Si never fights a battle without preparation. The competition between him and Hamao Kyosuke seemed like an unintentional provocation, but in fact, Song Si had really considered it carefully before starting his performance. Not only did he take into account the combat power of the two people, especially the close combat power, he even took Hamao Kyosuke's personality and his reaction to his provocation into account. Seeing that Hamao Kyosuke agreed without hesitation, Song Si knew that he had got the free sparring partner. With a smile on his face, Song Si made a gesture of invitation, and with a smile on his lips, he slowly followed a furious Hamao Kyosuke and walked towards a flat grassy area. Hamao Kyosuke is Emil Field's right-hand man after all, so his IQ is not enough. Although he was successfully angered by Song Si at the beginning, a few short steps were enough for Hamao Kyosuke to calm down. But considering his own face, Hamao Kyosuke didn't dare to say the words of regret, but just hinted to Song Si again and again. However, Song Si did not appreciate it and directly made a gesture of invitation to Hamao Kyosuke. The battle was about to break out. Because he was praised too highly by Song Si, Hamao Kyosuke was embarrassed to make the first move, and returned the salute in frustration. Who would have thought that Major General Song Si didn't care about his face at all? As soon as Hamao Kyosuke raised his hand, he attacked directly without any hesitation, and a straight punch came towards Hamao Kyosuke's face. Hamao Kyosuke dodged it a little embarrassedly, his face turned livid, and there was no master's demeanor at all. The layman watched the excitement, the expert watched the doorway. With just one punch, Hamao Kyosuke had a new understanding of Song Si's close combat ability. One punch could force him into this state, and he also put the title of a close combat expert on his head. Kyosuke Hamao also had a new understanding of Song Si's dark side. Kyosuke Hamao wiped the cold sweat from his forehead, and stared at Song Si with burning eyes. Seeing Kyosuke Hamao's nervousness, Song Si curled his lips and made one fake move after another. The nervous Kyosuke Hamao was teased by Song Si for several rounds, and then he realized that he had fallen into his trap and wasted a lot of physical strength. Kyosuke Hamao's temper came up all of a sudden, and he didn't care what kind of tricks Song Si had. He raised his fist and punched Song Si in the face. Seeing the fist coming towards him, Song Si didn't get angry but laughed. He lowered his body and dodged Kaisu Kameo's fist. The next second, his own fist landed steadily on Kaisu Kameo's stomach. All the strength emanated from the key hyaku point, and a loud sound was heard. Hameo Kaisuke's face suddenly turned red. It was not because of the pain, but because of embarrassment. Being hide until you fart or something, besides embarrassment, there was only embarrassment. At this moment, Song-si opened his mouth. He was heard muttering in a low voice, "I ran for a long time, but ended up farting." Although it was not clear what Song-si meant by this, Hameo Kaisuke was in a bad mood. At this moment, there was a sudden thunder in the sky, which was very appropriate. Then, raindrops the size of soybeans fell one by one, like beads with broken strings. Seeing this, Hameo Kaisuke quickly held his stomach, left a sentence "fight another day," and slipped away. Song-si looked at the wet grass in front of him and was dumbfounded for the first time in his life. Chapter 429 What's going on? Song-si doesn't like rainy days, nor does he like being stood up. So, Major General Song-si, who was stood up on a rainy day, was almost furious. But Hameo Kaisuke ran too fast, leaving him no place to get angry. Seeing Song-si's aggrieved look, Xiaodao, who was standing behind Song-si, shrugged his shoulders silently, trying not to laugh out loud. It was not at all his fault for gloating. It was just too funny. But Xiaodao's luck was really bad. Before he could hold it back, he was caught by Song-si, who turned around suddenly. Song-si, who was just worried about where to vent his anger, grabbed Xiaodao's collar and sneered, "You haven't had enough yet. Hameo Kaisuke ran away, so it's your turn. Come on. Practice." Faced with the unreasonable request of his superior, what could Xiaodao do? Of course, he had to make a bitter face and be a good sparring partner. Moreover, it was the kind of one-sided beating like a sandbag. Kaisuke Hameo watched quietly from a distance, and gained a further understanding of Major General Song-si's melee ability. This understanding made him pay attention to Major General Song-si's whereabouts and mood for a long time, so as to avoid Major General Song-si. Major General Song-si undoubtedly despised Kaisuke Hameo's behavior. If Kaisuke Hameo was a soldier under his command, he would have been beaten up by Song-si so badly that his mother would not recognize him. Unfortunately, Kaisuke Hameo was a man under Field. Field, who had just suffered a loss at the hands of Xiaodao, not only did not beat Kaisuke Hameo, but encouraged him. "Maybe this is I feel relieved knowing that you are not doing well?" Song-si, who has always been good at managing his emotions, faced the endless plum rain, and the shameless Field and Kaisuke Hameo, and his handsome face became darker day by day. Just when he was about to lose control, Tang Fan and Glasses finally walked out of the laboratory. Seeing Tang Fan walking towards him step by step, Song-si suddenly lost all his temper. He smiled and went to meet him, rubbed Tang Fan's head, and said with a smile, "What have you researched? Tell me." The words were as gentle as the spring breeze in March, which made the people around who were ravaged by Major General Song-si dumbfounded. Only Xiaodao was thinking, in the past few days, Major General Song-si's inexplicable temper, could it be envy, jealousy or something? Looking at the boss who only had Tang Fan in his eyes, Xiaodao felt that he accidentally knew something incredible. Xiaodao secretly moved to the side of Song Tong and pointed in the direction of Song-si and Tang Fan. Song Tong sneered and gave back 4 words, late realization. Xiaodao, who was despised by his wife, stood stiffly in place, with a look of disbelief on his face. "So, you are this kind of Major General Song?" Ms. Tao Kingxi, who was standing aside, patted his shoulder and silently signaled to him with a look of disdain, "You are blocking my view of the show." Xiaodao, who was completely disdained, could only step back silently and make room for Ms. Tao Kingxi. When the masses were holding all kinds of melons and waiting for the show to begin, Tang Fan, the heroine of the incident, failed to live up to the expectations of the people. She did not speak, but nodded heavily and slowly. Instead, Glasses on the side pointed his light brain at the male protagonist in their eyes. The melon-eating crowd was suddenly melon-eating. What's going on? Chapter 430 Moving. Before Glasses opened his mouth, he felt the condemning gazes of the guys. Being stared at by the guys, Glasses forgot the words that were on his lips. Finally, Tang Fan saw that the situation was not right and pulled Song-si to explain the science bit by bit. Seeing the two of them huddled together, whispering and talking, Everyone looked at each other and smiled knowingly. But before they could fully open their minds, they saw that their Major General Song's face turned ashen at a speed visible to the naked eye. Before everyone could react, they heard the low voice of Major General Song Si. Are you sure? Tang Fan and Glasses looked at each other, and then they nodded in the face of Song Si's gaze. The last bit of luck of Major General Song Si disappeared with this action, and his shoulders collapsed involuntarily. Is this considered digging a hole for yourself and burying yourself? Song Si's slightly bitter words perfectly expressed Tang Fan's thoughts. Tang Fan smiled bitterly and lowered his head. It's all my fault. If I wasn't curious, Song Si waved his hand and interrupted Tang Fan, you can't blame it all on you. If it were someone else, they would have found the abnormality of the genetically modified people and studied the chip. Who would have thought that the chip that Jim Field and his group installed in these genetically modified people would have the side effect of positioning? It was not until this time that the onlookers tasted something from Song Si's words. The playfulness in their eyes disappeared, leaving only full of concern. Song Si pondered, and his fingers unconsciously tapped the palm of his other hand. His movements were slow and gentle, but it seemed to touch everyone's heart, making people feel nervous. Every second that Song Si hesitated was a torment for everyone. When his hand finally stopped, everyone couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Looking at everyone's nervous look, a trace of guilt flashed through Song Si's eyes. It was so fast that Tang Fan couldn't help but doubt her own eyes. Could it be that she opened her eyes in the wrong posture? Tang Fan couldn't help but rub her glasses. When Tang Fan opened her eyes again, Song Si regained the expression that had been on his face for a long time, and calmly arranged the evacuation. After all the things were packed, Major General Song Si slowly told everyone that the new station he chose for everyone was not somewhere else, but the target they had just captured, Wei Rui Star. Field had just returned from Wei Rui Star after experiencing a massacre, and he had not yet forgotten the smell of blood and the scorched smell of burning corpses. When he heard this bad news, he felt bad. Song Si, you are not kidding. Song Si didn't say anything, but just gave everyone present a copy of the research data that Tang Fan and Yanjing had just produced. Field and his group looked at the analysis data in their hands. Even if they felt uncomfortable, they could only accept Song Si's choice and follow the large army to move towards Wei Rui Star. Hao Tuzing and Wei Ruizing seemed to have nothing in common, but Song Si found a common point in them that he did not appreciate very much. They are both experiencing the plum rain season. The drizzle followed Hao Tuzing to Wei Ruizing, making everyone's mood, like the weather, wet and stuffy. Chapter 431 New Target. Song Si hated this kind of weather the most, but now he couldn't say anything. After all, moving to Wei Rui Star was his choice. Although there were reasons, as the commander, he must take full responsibility for it. Complaining is impossible, not in this life. Facing the drizzle, Song Si and everyone else built a new base from scratch. The lush grass on Wei Rui Star perfectly matches its name, which also adds a lot of difficulty to everyone. Everyone cleaned up in the rain for a whole day and barely moved in. Looking at the wet ground and the wet people around, Tang Fan frowned and took the initiative to make a big pot of ginger soup for everyone. Ginger soup without sugar is spicy, but it is still spicy. But under the pressure of Major General Song Si's eyes, everyone still pinched their noses and drank it. A bowl of ginger soup plus a hot bath. Most people are away from colds. Miss Tang Fan, who was enthusiastic about serving the people, looked at the dry ground in her room, waved her sleeves, and hid her merits and fame. Ms. Tao Kingxi saw all this, and smiled and found Tang Fan, asking for a temporary squeeze. Tang Fan thought about it and agreed reluctantly. Pharmacists and the like are really not to be offended. After all, no one can guarantee that you will not get sick in your life. Especially in this place where there is a shortage of doctors and medicines, the possibility of falling into the hands of Miss Tao Kingxi is simply too great. Anyway, the room is quite big, just as, one more roommate. When Miss Tao Kingxi moved to Tang Fan's room with her luggage, she did not forget to pay the rent. Holding all kinds of medicines, Miss Tang Fan smiled with curved eyebrows. Such knowledgeable and interesting roommates are definitely the more the better. The relationship between the two people has become unprecedentedly close. Sleeping in the same room, eating in the same pot, and discussing the taste of the food while eating. This atmosphere made Major General Song Si jealous. But Song Si couldn't bring himself to say that the two of them should be separated. Because, these two research madmen just stayed together for one night, and had a little in-depth discussion about the damn chip, and came up with a great research result. They actually figured out a way to use the drug tract and the metal sheet to change the direction of the lines on it, thereby affecting its function. Although this method needs to be experimentally verified, it has greatly broadened Song-si's thinking. Early the next morning, Song-si asked Xiao Adao to lead the team to escort Tang Fan and Tao Qingxi back to House Saturn, and according to his ideas, they transformed the batch of chips. Unexpectedly, after several failures, the two of them really came up with a gadget that Song-si said completely reversed the function of the chip. Through this little gadget, Tang Fan and Tao Qingxi actually captured the signal sent by Jim Field. Although the signal was a little weak and not continuous enough, for them who were passive, being able to lock on to the control center of Jim Field's system, even if it might be just a temporary command center like the experimental star, was already good news that couldn't be better. Song-si and Yanjing monitored the situation for 3 days without blinking, and finally found the exact location of the target. Major General Song-si finally smiled. The target was determined by Song-si, and the task of investigation naturally fell on Field and others. The process of persuading Field was a little long, but in the end, Major General Song-si still won a comprehensive victory. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 432 Bait. Song-si exhausted all his strength to convince Field, but as soon as Field left, Song-si asked Xiao Dao to follow him. It is impossible to trust Field. It is impossible in this life. With Field's cautious nature, although he set out earlier than Xiao Dao and others, he still fell behind Xiao Dao and others steadily. When Xiao Dao and others took the infrared scanner and secretly scanned the Earth yellow planet, Hongmeng star, 360 degrees without dead angles, and used the drone to perfectly transmit the data back, they could not wait for Field and others. Xiao Dao sighed and passed the message to the rear. Looking at the message from Xiao Dao, Song-si raised his eyebrows and used the drone to issue a concealed order to Xiao Dao. Hiding in place is basically the same as resting for Xiao Dao. He saluted the drone casually, and then lay down leisurely on the spot. The evening breeze brushed past my ears and through my hair. The wind stopped at the branches, and the yellow leaves fell. The light of the setting sun dyed the sky golden, and the clouds seemed to be coated with honey, just like the honey osmanthus cake of Beiwidang. Xiao Dao swallowed his saliva, silently took out a nutrient, glanced at it with disdain, and put it in his mouth. Although the Alliance has developed more than 1,000 flavors of nutrient supplements, in his eyes, who has been eating this stuff for a long time, nutrient supplements are just the taste of nutrient supplements. It's okay to extend life for a day or two, but after a long time, it will fade out in your mouth. At this time, everything looks delicious. Xiao Dao smiled bitterly, swallowed the nutrient supplement resignedly, and looked behind him. In the distance, a colorful and obscene mecha appeared faintly. The way of hiding was extremely amateurish, and even a pharmacist like Song Tong might not be fooled. Xiao Dao looked at the mecha, and then at the dense red dots on the infrared scanner, and couldn't help but twitching his mouth. No wonder Song-si asked him to wait. So, he was waiting for Field to come to his door to be cannon fodder? Song-si is really insidious. However, he likes it. Not only does he like it, but he also has a vague expectation of Hongmeng Star's reaction. Xiao Dao smiled and set up the infrared scanner, and took out a nutrient and held it in his mouth. With such a wonderful drama to eat with, the nutrient seemed to be a little more delicious. As for reminding Field or something? Impossible. It's impossible in this lifetime. The hidden technology that even Song Tong couldn't hide quickly attracted the attention of the people on Hongmeng Star. Seeing the red dots, like a sharp arrow, approaching Field at a very fast speed, Xiao Dao's eyes flashed with interest. Xiao Dao's mind quickly calculated the location where the two sides met, and the video equipment on the metro was aimed at that direction without hesitation. A row of black beast-shaped mechas appeared in Xiao Dao's camera at an extremely fast speed. Looking at the familiar mechas that looked exactly the same as the ones on the experimental planet, and thinking about the difficulty of controlling this mecha, Xiao Dao took a breath. The enemy was more powerful than he imagined. At least, in terms of the use of mental power, it far exceeded him and the group of comrades behind him. Chapter 433 Tension. Thinking of this, Xiaotao felt a chill on his back and couldn't help shivering. What Xiaotao could think of, Songsi in front of the screen naturally thought of it too. A rabbit will kick an eagle when it's anxious. Even if he knew he couldn't beat the opponent, Songsi would never give up. He frowned and pulled Tang Fan over immediately. After all, now, at present, she is the only one who knows the most about beast-type mechas, or mechas controlled by mental power. It would be good if Tang Fan could figure it out, but even if he couldn't figure it out, there would be no loss, right? Tang Fan was squatting in the toilet. After receiving the news, he didn't care about anything else. He tidied up a little and walked towards Songsi with his pants in his hand. Seeing more than a dozen beast-type mechas approaching Field and others in an orderly manner, Tang Fan's face suddenly became darker than the bottom of a pot. Can Xiaotao scan the position of the mecha pilot? Tang Fan's throat was a little dry, so his voice was low and a little floating. Songsi understood what she meant immediately. Although it was a bit difficult to fly a drone to give Xiaotao instructions, Songsi still tried his best to satisfy Tang Fan's wish. Of course, deep down, he also wanted to know the answer. With a tacit understanding of many years of getting along, Xiaotao guessed what Songsi meant by mistake, and aimed the infrared scanner at the group of mechas. As the distance got closer and closer, the people in the beast-shaped mechas finally revealed their outlines. Songsi, Tang Fan and Yanjing, the three of them maintained the same posture, staring at the screen tightly. Especially Yanjing, who was a data analyst, as the data in front of him passed by one after another, one red value after another appeared in front of him, and soybean-sized cold sweat emerged from his forehead involuntarily. Dense beads of sweat covered his entire forehead, but he had no time to reach out and wipe it. Tang Fan didn't dare to disturb Glasses, so he could only pat Songsi's shoulder and whispered, "You've also discovered it?" Songsi nodded slightly. "They are even thinner than you, and the postures are particularly awkward." Tang Fan took over the conversation and said, "It's like a baby curled up in the mother's womb." Songsi turned her head and looked at her, and nodded heavily. Glasses, who had calculated 3 times repeatedly, was shocked when he heard this, and quickly typed in a set of values. The red value representing abnormality immediately decreased at a speed visible to the naked eye. The problem seemed to be solved, but Glasses' expression did not relax, but became more serious. Songsi couldn't help but put his hand on Glasses' shoulder and asked sternly, "What did you enter?" Glasses silently covered his face and whispered, "Data of genetically modified people." Data of genetically modified people provided by Miss Tao Qingxi. When Songsi and Tang Fan heard this, they couldn't help but exchange glances with each other, and their expressions when looking at the group of mechas became more complicated. Tang Fan, who had been with Miss Tao Qingxi for such a long time, actually didn't know that she had this data. Where did the research samples come from? Experimental star? Weirui star? Alliance? Or her? The last option made Tang Fan's back shiver. As if he could see through her thoughts, Songsi slowly walked to her side, patted her hands, and silently comforted her. "This is just a guess, don't be too nervous." Chapter 434, Terrifying Thoughts. Songsi was not good at comforting others, and Tang Fan was a smart man, so his words did not have any effect. Tang Fan stood in front of the screen without saying a word, his face livid. Songsi could not help but glare at the culprit, and Glasses realized belatedly that he had made a mistake. But once the words were spoken, it was impossible to take them back. As for persuading Miss Tang Fan, Glasses did not even dare to think about it. He could only curl up his body and reduce his presence. Facing Tang Fan, who was in a bad mood, and Glasses, who was obviously pretending to be dead, Songsi felt his head throbbing with pain. But before he could think of a move, he was attracted by the fire on the screen. Field, who thought he was doing well, was met by the beast-type mecha warrior who suddenly appeared in front of them. Field and others suffered a great loss as soon as they met. The other party seemed to have studied them well, and the firepower was basically concentrated around Field. In just a few seconds, Field's beautiful mecha was injured in many places, which made him feel very distressed. Since he dared to bravely enter this dangerous place, he would naturally not be without support. Field, who was targeted, was furious and pressed the only red button on the operation interface without hesitation. The next second, the palm of the mecha slowly retracted, and a black tube appeared in front of everyone. Looking at the diameter, Glasses couldn't help but frown and muttered, "This seems to have exceeded the weapon configuration standard of civilian mechas." Song Si glanced at him and sneered, "You are not a 3-year-old child, why are you still so naive?" As the largest energy stone merchant in the Alliance and the god of wealth of Cheyenne's Huo Military Academy, this caliber of light energy cannon is not surprising. Tang Fan touched his chin and took over the conversation. "What makes people curious is you helped him install this thing on the new model produced by Tang's Mecha." The building was crooked all of a sudden. Glasses and Song Si looked at each other, not knowing how to respond. Fortunately, Tang Fan was just talking casually, his attention was still focused on the screen, and he had no intention of asking questions. The two of them breathed a sigh of relief silently and covered their mouths tightly. Emofield took out his killer weapon, of course, not for fun. The dark tube was aimed at the mecha in the front row without hesitation. With a loud bang, a white light rushed directly to the heart of the beast-shaped mecha, digging out a large hole with a diameter of more than 1 meter. Through the large hole, Tang Fan clearly saw the internal structure of the mecha and the person whose lower limbs disappeared. Just as they expected, thin, with awkward postures, like a baby curled up in the mother's womb. Of course, some of them exceeded their expectations. For example, the whole body was shining with a metallic luster. For example, the bone age was over 60 years old. For example, under the infrared scanner lens, the red dot representing vitality had disappeared before the light energy cannon touched the mecha. Looking at the rapidly dissipating red dot, the three people in front of the screen shuddered at the same time. What kind of enemy did they encounter? It was simply terrifying to think about it. This is beyond my understanding. I need to request external assistance. Tang Fan said the last 4 words with great difficulty. Song Si patted her shoulder and whispered, "Do you need to do some psychological preparation first?" Tang Fan firmly shook his head. Chapter 435 Speculation. She and Tao Qingxi were originally partners who each got what they needed. It was just that after spending so much time together, she unilaterally thought that the two of them could be considered friends. But obviously, Miss Tao Qingxi didn't think so. In Miss Tao Qingxi's mind, her friendship was not only not comparable to her life and property, but even inferior to the favorability of Song Si and Glasses. Tang Fan was a little disappointed. But it was not so serious that he avoided her. Song Si secretly glanced at her and confirmed that this was her sincere expression of her true intentions. Only then did he contact Tao Qingxi through a short-distance communication tool. Although Tang Fan kept saying that she didn't mind, when Tao Qingxi really walked in, her expression was still unnatural for a moment. Seeing this, Song Si couldn't help but smile bitterly, and had a new understanding of Miss Tang Fan's ability to say one thing and mean another. Although he was reluctant to let the little girl around him suffer, he had no better genetic expert than Miss Tao Qingxi, so Song Si could only bear the pain, smiled and welcomed Tao Qingxi over, and briefly explained the situation. Major General Song Si had good eloquence, and Tao Qingxi quickly understood her mission and watched it on the optical brain of Glasses. Especially after the beast-shaped metro was blasted open, Tao Qingxi did not miss any frame of the video equipment. The thin, awkward posture, like a baby curled up in the mother's body, completely attracted Tao Qingxi's attention. Especially under the infrared scanner lens, the red dot representing vitality disappeared before the light energy cannon touched the mecha, and the blood color on Tao Qingxi's face faded away completely. The trembling legs could not even support her own weight, so she squatted. "My legs are a little numb after squatting for a long time." Tao Qingxi's excuse was not very clever. Song Si, Tang Fan and Glasses were not stupid, so naturally none of them could be fooled. Especially Tang Fan. Her face was almost written with the words, "You make it up, keep making it up, I lose if I believe you." Knowing that he couldn't escape, Tao Qingxi organized his words and spoke with difficulty. "I suspect that Jim Field has completed the research on mental power stripping and put the research results into practice." The three of them knew every word of Miss Tao Qingxi's words, but when they put them together, the three self-proclaimed smart people were a little confused. Glasses shook his head and muttered, "Too much information, I need to digest it." Song Si also put his index finger deep, rubbed his temple, and said in a deep voice, "Can you explain to me what mental stripping means?" Tao Qingxi raised her pale face and said to Song Si indifferently, "People in the Earth era believe that as long as the soul is strong enough, it can be immortal and go to another person's body to continue living." Obviously, Jim Field believed this theory and put it into practice. This sounded a bit ridiculous, but Tao Qingxi said it so seriously that Song Si actually believed it a little. Tang Fan glanced at Tao Qingxi, poked his back teeth, and said coldly, "This is just your guess. What is the truth?" We have to use facts to speak. Chapter 436 A Family. Since Tang Fan had doubted Tao Qingxi, he was not as fair as usual. Seeing the little girl's unreasonable and unruly look, Songxi could only shake his head and smile bitterly. Tao Qingxi looked at Tang Fan's temper and guessed that he had guessed a little bit, so he smiled and didn't say anything. Songxi stuck his back teeth, clicked his tongue, and commanded the drone to fly in front of Emelfield and others, and took a universal retreat posture in the alliance. Emelfield looked at his scarred fuselage, and then looked at his light energy cannon that was less than 40% charged, and obeyed Songxi's order for the first time. The mecha driven by Emelfield was the latest model of Tang's mecha. Although it was a little worse than the military products specially provided for the expeditionary army, its performance had reached the highest level of the alliance. Although he couldn't beat this group of beast-type mecha warriors, he ran away in circles at full speed, and this group of beast-type mechas couldn't stand them. Just as they were chasing each other, Xiaodao, who had been lurking for a long time, finally took action. He sent out a team of 3 people, one of whom dragged away the mecha that Emelfield had scrapped at the fastest speed, and 2 people were the last to leave. This mantis stalks the cicada, while the oriole waits behind. Behavior almost angered Emelfield to death. Emelfield felt that he had a new understanding of Songxi's shamelessness. But when Emelfield spent 3 S-level energy stones to get rid of the group of beast-type mecha warriors and finally returned to Weirui Star, the scene in front of him once again refreshed his 3 views. Miss Tang Fan, the head of Tang's mecha, and Miss Tao Qingxi, the legendary genius pharmacist, actually openly discussed the ownership issue of the opponent he defeated in public. That's my Emelfield's trophy. Shouldn't you ask for his opinion before discussing it? Facing Emelfield's questioning, Tang Fan and Tao Qingxi remained calm and indifferent. Ms. Tao Qingxi turned her head in cooperation and said with a smile, "Then dear Mr. Emelfield, which part of the mecha pilot's body do you want?" Looking at Tao Qingxi's smile that didn't reach her eyes and the shining scalpel in her hand, Emelfield couldn't help but take a few steps back and laughed dryly. "We are all family. Sister-in-law, take whatever you like. As brothers, there is no room for negotiation. As long as sister-in-law can share the experimental data with me, I have nothing else to ask for." Tao Qingxi was in a good mood, but when Emelfield called her sister-in-law, all those past events suddenly surged up, making her squint. After all, they lived together for a while. When she saw Tao Qingxi's expression, Tang Fan knew that Emelfield had touched her reverse scale. Although Emelfield's character was indeed not very good, what he said was indeed correct. Tao Qingxi was indeed his sister-in-law, and this thing was indeed his trophy. It was not Tang Fan's style to take advantage of everything, so she took a step back. "In that case, let's do as you say." Tang Fan gave in neatly, but Tao Qingxi, who had taken advantage, was not happy at all. She had finally gotten rid of the Field family, but now, she was forcibly assigned to the Field family. What was going on? Chapter 437, Deja Vu. Ms. Tao Qingxi, who was filled with mixed feelings, had no way to reject this fact and could only accept it helplessly. Looking at Tao Qingxi's purple face, Tang Fan silently allowed her, an outsider, to point fingers at her, an insider. The beast-type mecha was violently dismantled in an extremely unscientific way. Seeing that nearly half of the parts had become completely unrepairable, Tang Fan's heartache was clearly written on his face. Major General Songxi could only pat her shoulder weakly to comfort her. Because Tang Fan made a timely concession, the genetically modified human in the mecha was completely taken out except for the legs that were bombarded by the light energy cannon. Tang Fan only glanced at it and didn't have the courage to look at it again. It's not that Tang Fan is timid, but that thing is indeed a bit eye-catching. In terms of appearance, it is less than 40% similar to humans. The facial features have long been diluted, completely approaching the appearance of a sheath beetle. The body and limbs are similar to those of a human baby, and are completely covered by an exoskeleton like a sheath beetle. Songxi embraced Tang Fan, covered her glasses, and said softly, "Don't think too much." Even so, Tang Fan was still disgusted. "Why do I feel that this thing is more disgusting than mutants and even insect nests?" Songxi stared at the corpse and answered Tang Fan's question. "Because mutants and insect nests are enemies, just kill them. But this thing in front of us has human genes, which makes people feel uncomfortable. A toad jumping on its instep may not scare people to death, but it will disgust people. Maybe this is the truth? I have to say that Jim Field has successfully disgusted me. However, Major General Song is quite calm, facing Tang Fan's joke. Song Si pulled the corner of his mouth and said with a fake smile, "You will get used to it." Tang Fan sighed and said, "As a Major General of the Alliance, you can't talk nonsense. Where have you seen such a perverted thing? You will get used to it. You are just bluffing." Tao Qingxi, who was busy dealing with genetically modified people, heard this and raised his head at the right time, and said indifferently, "It's not that there is no chance to see this thing in the Alliance. My dear senior sister has always admired Jim Field and has always been in close contact with him. As long as Jim Field has revealed a few words, as a follower, she is likely to make a replica." After hearing this, Tang Fan and Song Si's bodies stiffened, and they thought of the same thing at the same time. Anna Smith's nephew, Titan. Although the two sentences did not match a single word, the meaning was exactly the same. Tao Qingxi smiled meaningfully, clapped his hands gently, and joked, "Although, I think so too. But I still want to say that the two of you have a good understanding of each other." Major General Song Si, who has always been very good at managing his facial expressions, couldn't help but blush when he heard this. Fortunately, Tang Fan's attention was not on him. Song Si secretly glanced at the little girl next to him, staring at Tao Qingxi with shining eyes, and another thought flashed through his mind. In fact, being discovered by Tang Fan is not necessarily a bad thing. In this case, she should pay more attention to herself. Tao Qingxi glanced at the excited Tang Fan, and then looked at the worried Song Si. And the smile in his eyes could not be hidden. The love story between children is really too interesting. Chapter 438 Homesickness. Although Miss Tao Qingxi saw Song Si's boyish thoughts clearly, she would not take the initiative to tell Tang Fan. "Isn't gossip interesting? Isn't it good to watch a play? Why do you have to poke the window paper for others?" Tang Fan's behavior just now was clear to her. Repaying evil with virtue and letting lovers in the world finally get married have always belonged to her, Tao Qingxi. She is so stingy. Glancing at Song Si provocatively, Miss Tao Qingxi turned her head, smiled and pulled Tang Fan, showing the enthusiasm of leading students, and carefully analyzed a body in front of her. Although Tang Fan is a genius in mecha and starships, and has memorized the Alliance Plant Encyclopedia and Animal Encyclopedia, he is not familiar with more knowledge of pharmacy. Faced with the professional terms that Miss Tao Qingxi kept throwing out, she didn't understand most of them. In addition, her rejection of genetically modified people made her face look a little embarrassed. This situation is very rare. Not to mention the people present, even Tang Gang and Qin Yi, who have lived with Tang Fan for many years, have probably never seen it. Major General Song Si was so distressed that he was throbbing, but competing with Miss Tao Qingxi for someone. Song Si was rare, cowardly. Tang Fan and Song Si, layman, could only watch the fun, but Song Tong, an expert, really heard some tricks from Tao Qingxi's words. Knowing the level of pharmacy of these two people, she could only take the initiative to stand up and repeat what she understood to the two of them in a simple and easy-to-understand way. Neither of them understood a word of Miss Tao Qingxi's long speech, but Song Tong's few words were understated, and the two of them listened to it. Looking at the two people's sudden enlightenment, Miss Tao Qingxi had the illusion that good intentions were struck by lightning. Miss Tao Qingxi couldn't do anything to these two people, but she could just shut up, right? Tang Fan and Song Si didn't feel anything about her sudden stop, but Song Tong, a professional, felt that the most important moment was ruined. That feeling was simply amazing. Seeing that everyone felt the same as her, Miss Tao Qingxi finally let out the breath that was stuck in her heart. As for Tang Fan and Song Si, who were out of the situation, who wanted to see them? Miss Tao Qingxi directed Song Tong and others who had something to ask of her, raised her head, showed her swan-like long neck, and walked away with a proud face. I don't know if this counts as a spiritual victory. Seeing Miss Tao Qingxi slamming the door, Tang Fan and Song Si finally realized the reason for her change of mood. The two looked at each other, dumbfounded. Now, at this moment, it seems that apology is useless? Then, they should just do what they should do. After making this difficult decision, the two turned around without hesitation. One strode towards the monitor screen, and the other squatted on the spot to pick up the metal and parts scattered on the ground. Miss Tang Fan, who came from the 9th level planet and was used to hard life, often said, "Don't throw it away, reuse it." This sentence was learned from another pharmacy master, Mr. Li Bangsha. In an instant, Tang Fan remembered the days on the planet Orlando. At this moment, Tang Fan finally understood what the moon is rounder in my hometown meant. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 439 Obsession. The sky was pale, and the tiny light could not wait to emerge from the clouds, and the soft light wiped away the depth of the night. The wind in the early morning was blowing, and it was particularly cool. Tang Fan, who had been thinking about her relatives and friends all night, yawned and walked out of her temporary residence, with a tired face. What drove her out of the room was not responsibility or her love for mecha research, but her rumbling stomach. As a person who is used to eating food, asking her to drink nutritional supplements all day long is simply to kill her. Wei Rui Star has nothing else but a lot of plants. As long as she prepares an extra portion of food, Song Tong is very happy to do food safety testing for her to ensure that what she eats is non-toxic and harmless natural high-quality products. Two like-minded people, lit a fire behind a huge rock next to the station, sharing the charcoal-grilled matsutake mushrooms one bite at a time, happy like gods. The simplest cooking method can often preserve the original flavor of the ingredients to the greatest extent. Fresh matsutake mushrooms are such delicious ingredients. After such plain cooking, they are still fresh and fragrant, and have endless aftertaste. Naturally, they also attracted countless people who knew what they were doing. For example, Song Si, Xiao Dao, and Tao Qingxi quickly gathered around to share a piece of the pie. As for others, it's not that they can't smell the smell, but they just can't bring themselves to do it. After eating and drinking, the sleepiness on Tang Fan's face finally gradually dissipated. But eating someone's mouth is soft, and taking someone's hand is short. After eating the grilled matsutake mushrooms, Tao Qingxi naturally felt embarrassed to turn her face away from Tang Fan, and took the initiative to find Tang Fan and explain the origin of the set of data she taught classes. It turned out that Professor Tao Bixi, who is Miss Tao Qingxi's biological sister, who is in love with Tang Fan, was not as simple as Tang Fan thought. In addition to being in love, this girl actually did some sneaky things and quietly opened a back door on the optical computer of her senior brother, Solomon Burke. As Jim Field's first disciple and the head of the research team, even the optical computer that Solomon Burke put out in the open has very high research value. We don't know what kind of mentality Tao Bixi has. Tang Fan didn't want to delve into why she gave such confidential things to Tao Qingxi. She just wanted to ask a question: is this set of data from the child of the Smith family? Listening to Tang Fan's slightly trembling voice, Tao Qingxi's eyes flashed with a trace of pity. But she couldn't lie to Tang Fan on this issue. After a long silence, she finally nodded slowly. In an instant, Tang Fan's mood was mixed. She didn't know whether she should be glad that this set of data was not hers, or whether she should be sad that this set of data was inextricably linked to her after all. She lowered her head and was silent for a long time. It was so long that Song Si began to panic. She finally raised her head slowly, turned on her optical computer, and sent a piece of information over. This is Zheng Awei's physical data, diagnosis and prescription. I hope it will be useful to you. Tao Qingxi almost jumped up when she heard this. Grandpa Li Bangshi's diagnosis and prescription? You have helped me a lot. Tao Qingxi couldn't wait to accept the information and read it quickly. The more she read, the more excited she became. In the end, she didn't care about other people at all. She held her light computer and went into her room. Tang Fan also went into his room and continued his research. In a sense, these two people are really similar to some extent. For example, their obsession with scientific research. Of course, Miss Tao Qingxi, who is in danger every day, is more obsessed than Tang Fan. Chapter 440 Torment. Unfortunately, after a period of research, Tang Fan only realized one truth: scientific research is sometimes like going to the toilet. You have worked very hard, but the result may be nothing. Tang Fan has been more savvy about machinery since she was a child. Whenever she gets a machine, she will always find ways to disassemble it and put it in order. When she has studied it thoroughly, she will put it back together for you. This wild way makes her more capable than the traditional mecha foundry. She may have a 70% chance of success with a mecha controlled by Dan Bailey's mental power in front of her. But Tang Fan has no way to deal with a beast-shaped mecha that has been violently dismantled and is missing the core. As for the beast-shaped mecha on the experimental star, Tang Fan can only worship it. For the first time in her life, she hit a wall in mecha casting. Tang Fan was particularly depressed and even lost the interest in eating. Tang Fan's mood also directly affected other people. For example, Song Tong, a foodie. For example, Tao Qingxi, a research maniac. It's okay for the former to eat less. Anyway, there are nutritional supplements, so she won't starve to death. As for the latter, Major General Song Si couldn't help but glance at her locked door with worry. In the past, when Tang Fan opened fire, Tao Qingxi, who smelled the fragrance of food, would come out reluctantly once or twice. If he was more diligent and said a few more words, he could get some useful information and learn about the progress of scientific research from the side. Nowadays, without the temptation of food, she stayed in the temporary house directly. Eating, drinking, defecating, urinating and sleeping were all solved in the room. Sanitation was one aspect. He didn't understand the progress of scientific research, which was worrying. It's not terrible for Tang Fan to fall into a bottleneck. Mecha research is a long process. With her intelligence and wisdom, there will always be a day to get out of the predicament. Did it the beast-shaped mecha that makes people's scalps numb also be blasted through by Emil Field's light energy cannon? It just consumes a little energy. He, his comrades around him, and the residents of the alliance behind him can wait. Wait for Tang Fan to slowly break through and slowly come out. But Miss Tao Qingxi's research cannot stagnate. No matter when, people always come first. Jim Field and others use the professional knowledge to conduct illegal genetic modification research and conduct experiments on living people, even humans. Their behavior of treating humans as guinea pigs is not only against ethics and morality, but also a declaration of war on the entire alliance and all mankind. Now, the battle horn has been blown, and the war is about to break out, but they have not even touched the edge of the enemy, let alone measure the enemy's strength. The pressure and frustration on Song Si's shoulders are countless times more than Tang Fan. But he can neither lock himself up like Tao Qingxi, nor vent like Tang Fan. He can only take out all the knowledge he learned in the expression management course and arm himself as if nothing had happened. Not only that, he also has to coax his little girl with kind words to make her less depressed. After all, he still has to rely on the food cooked by others to coax another home pharmacy master to go out. How frustrating this life is, only Song Si knows. And I don't know when it will end. Maybe, it was the moment when Miss Tao Qingxi walked out of the room? Chapter 441 Rain. Tang Fan was in a low mood. Tao Qingxi was locked in the room and refused to come out. Everything was not going well. Everyone on the entire Weirui Star, as long as they were not stupid, saw some signs. God seemed to have noticed something. Ink-like dark clouds covered the entire sky in an instant. The sun, which was originally hanging high, disappeared, and the dark clouds were about to fall from the sky in the next second. Gusts of wind rolled up the fallen leaves, and the space seemed to be distorted. Soon, heavy rain fell unscrupulously. The big raindrops were crackling on the roof of the temporary residence, like a crappy musician beating a low-quality instrument in a disorderly manner, which made people feel even more depressed. The ground of the temporary residence was not high, and the rain gradually seeped out. Song Si looked at the expensive monitoring equipment and various electronic components around him, and couldn't help frowning. But this hesitation only lasted for 3 seconds. Song Si made his decision quickly. He took out his waterproof suit from the space buckle and wrapped the dejected little girl tightly. He picked up the loudspeaker, stood in the most conspicuous place, and calmly directed the overall situation despite being wet. People all have bad habits. Tang Fan, who Song Si had been coaxing for a long time but did not get better, actually, figured it out after he left for only half an hour. Looking at everyone busy and then looking at herself who was growing mushrooms in the corner, Tang Fan felt that she was being hypocritical. Being hypocritical was not her usual style. Tang Fan's old face blushed when she reacted, and she immediately threw herself into the frontline work of flood control and rescue. More people means more care. What's more, Tang Fan is a professional who is proficient in machinery. Her arrival is like saving people from fire and water. Of course, if everyone didn't look at her, and then looked at Song Si, with an expression of sudden enlightenment, Tang Fan would be much more comfortable. Tang Fan's scalp was numb. She glared at Song Si fiercely, and couldn't help but complain in her heart, I really don't know what kind of unreliable ideas Song Si has instilled in these subordinates who love gossip the most. Song Si, who was warned with eyes by Tang Fan, could only smile bitterly. The girl he liked was unreasonable. What could he do? Of course, he would continue to pamper her. What if he could return her? Except, I was a little more depressed, but it was no big deal. Anyway, I wouldn't die for a while. Song-si gritted his teeth, and continued to persist in the heavy rain despite everyone's teasing eyes. When everything was packed up, Song-si could wring water out of everything from his hair to the shoes on his feet. Although he had many complaints about Song-si, based on the fake brother-sister relationship and the friendship that he wrapped himself tightly and didn't get wet in the rain, Tang Fan still provided a clean towel as a friendly gesture. Song-si was flattered to receive it. For a moment, he almost forgot the correct way to use the towel. He just wanted to take it back and treasure it. This was the first gift Tang Fan had given him. Rounding it off, it was a token of love. Not to mention treasure, it is not impossible to worship it. Anyway, Major General Song-si really didn't need a towel. Seeing Song-si dumbfounded, Tang Fan couldn't help but raise his eyebrows, spread his delicate hands upwards, and stretch them directly in front of Song-si. What, don't want it? Then give it back to me. The mess in Song-si's mind suddenly disappeared. He grabbed the towel tightly and took a step back. Give it to me, it's mine. After saying that, he ran away. Chapter 442 Consciousness. Looking at Song-si's fleeing back, Tang Fan glanced at his space button, his face full of confusion. It's just a towel, she won't really take it back, is it that serious? Looking at Tang Man's confused eyes, Song Tong quickly covered his mouth and hid behind Zia Adeo. Song-si, Mr. Song, you have come to this day. Unfortunately, Song Tong's abnormality did not arouse Tang Fan's vigilance. Her attention was successfully attracted by a light squeak. A thin figure stood there against the light. She did nothing, just slightly curled the corners of her mouth, which caused Tang Fan to scream. You succeeded, right? Hearing Tang Fan's excited voice, Song-si hurriedly opened the door and stuck his head out. The next second, everyone's eyes were all focused on Tao Qingxi's pale face. Tao Qingxi reached out and rubbed Tang Fan's head, nodded slightly, and a string of professional terms came straight to Tang Fan, making her head buzz. She cried, grabbed Tao Qingxi's collar, and said carefully, Sister, I don't have much education and my comprehension is poor. Can you speak more simply? Song-si almost choked on her saliva when she heard this. Tang Fan, who studied mecha casting and starship casting at the Blue Sea Mecha Academy, and studied mecha driving at the Alliance Military Academy under the pseudonym Yin Xiu, was considered to have little education. Then what about the group of people in front of him who only have 1 degree? Illiterate? What's more terrifying is that most of the people present didn't notice this problem at all. Especially Tao Qingxi, who actually slowed down his speech and repeated it in a way that any pharmacy novice could understand. Fearing that Tang Fan would feel burdened, she deliberately patted her shoulder and said earnestly, Speaking of which, I have to thank you. If it weren't for the information you provided, I might not be able to come up with results in such a short time. Looking at Miss Tao Qingxi's sincere eyes, Tang Fan, who has always been thicker than a city wall, couldn't help but bow his head and smile shyly. Such a little girl's attitude is not common, and it almost broke Song Tong's glasses. Of course, it was a different feeling in the eyes of Major General Song-si. His little girl looks so beautiful when she smiles. If there is a chance in the future, I must praise her more and make her smile more. There is really some truth in the saying that love makes people blind. Major General Song-si, who has always been smart and witty, didn't realize how thick the filter he wore was. Anyway, Tang Fan looks good no matter what. Even repeating Tao Qingxi's words in disbelief is cute. You mean, part of Zhang Awei's body data overlaps with a genetically modified person in the mecha, the mental power remaining in its body does not match its body. In addition to the research results, Tao Qingxi, who is in a good mood, nodded and patiently explained to Tang Fan. Because the use of genetic drugs with similar ingredients will cause the same genes in the body data of different people. Anna Smith should have created the child named Titan according to the instructions of someone. That person is very likely Jim Field himself. Or, to be precise, his consciousness. Tao Qingxi said the last sentence lightly, but it hit everyone's heart heavily. Everyone looked at each other, speechless. Chapter 443 Roll of Eyes. Tang Fan narrowed his eyes, as if he understood something. Grandpa Li Bangsha has initially identified that the medicine in Zhang Awei's body is closely related to the sheath beetle. According to what you said, The genes of the genetically modified human should also come from the sheath beetle. Tao Qingxi shook his head. Your guess makes sense, but it is not accurate. The genes in the genetically modified human are far more complicated than you think. At present, I can only confirm that it has 48% human genes and 35% sheath beetle genes. I am not sure what species the remaining 17% comes from. The fact that the well-informed little genius of pharmacy could not determine the source of the genes made everyone's heart tremble. Thinking about the characteristics of the mutant creatures encountered on the planets on the edge of the Alliance, they could all appear in these genetically modified people, and they couldn't help but stand on end. Other mutant creatures. Tang Fan seemed to have thought of something, and his eyes drifted to Songxi involuntarily. Songxi received the signal sent by Tang Fan and hurriedly leaned over to listen. Tang Fan looked at his cheat brother who had no tacit understanding with him, and couldn't help but grit his teeth. He whispered unhappily, as a Major General of the Alliance and the commander of the Expeditionary Force, you should have a copy of the data of other mutant creatures. If someone asked Songxi for such confidential documents on the land of the Alliance, he would not even think about it, and the word no would definitely come out of his mouth. Even so, the little girl in front of him meant a lot to him. After all, as a Major General of the Alliance and the son of a Marshal, every word in the confidentiality regulations was an existence that he could not forget. But now, in front of my eyes, everything is so different. It is said that when a general is away, he may not obey the orders of the king. The great man also said that the specific situation requires specific analysis. Songxi's thoughts struggled for a while, and finally, he slowly walked towards Tao Qingxi. However, he did not hand over the data in his hand to Tao Qingxi, but asked her for the other 17% of the genetic data. Tao Qingxi was confused and transmitted the data to Songxi's optical brain. The next second, Major General Songxi was possessed by glasses and data analysts, and his fingers flew, performing a breathtaking operation. 10 minutes later, the remaining 17% of the genetic source was placed in front of Tao Qingxi. For the first time, Miss Tao Qingxi felt the power of the confidentiality regulations, and she was very angry about Major General Songxi's confidentiality awareness. Unfortunately, she was a scumbag and had to seek protection from others. She could only swallow this mouthful of anger. After talking about the genetic composition, let's talk about the residual mental power. Tao Qingxi just started, and Miss Tang Fan said in cooperation, so, whose mental power residue does not match its body? This seemingly simple question successfully stumped Miss Tao Qingxi, the little genius of pharmacy. Looking at her twitching mouth, Tang Fan realized that he should have said the wrong thing. The little girl was rarely panicked, and couldn't help but cast a look of help to Major General Songxi. Songxi patted Tang Fan and smiled. When adults are talking, children should not interrupt. After that, he turned his head and bowed to Tao Qingxi. The child has been spoiled by us, and likes to interrupt when there is nothing to do. Don't mind, Miss Tao, you can continue. Songxi's skill in smoothing things over was as bad as Tang Fan's talent in pharmacy. It didn't work at all to ease the atmosphere, but instead received a big eye roll from the two ladies. Major General Song, who was attacked by a double eye roll for the first time in his life, widened his eyes and couldn't believe that he would have such a day. Chapter 444 Know what? Seeing that someone was in a worse situation than herself, Miss Tao Qingxi, who was stumped by Tang Fan's question, finally let go. Although I can detect that there is residual spiritual power in its body, and can analyze that the two are not matched, because there is too little spiritual power left in the body and it is still rapidly dissipating, I cannot completely lock the source of this spiritual power. Then what can you do? What a statement. Tang Fan, who just said the wrong thing, waved his hands repeatedly to show his innocence. Songxi patted her shoulder, silently comforting her, and stared nervously at Miss Tao Qingxi in the center of the crowd. Miss Tao Qingxi's expression was indeed not very good. She took a deep breath, rolled her eyes at the culprit who was related to her, and sneered, I don't know much, just 2 points. First, the owner of this spiritual power has not been in this body for a long time. Because the spiritual power and body in the body are not integrated to a high degree. Second, there are certain prerequisites for spiritual power to invade other people's bodies. We may not meet the owner of this spiritual power again for a while. Songxi's eyes lit up, and he hurriedly asked, what do you think are the prerequisites for spiritual power to invade other people's bodies? Tao Qingxi shook his head, no investigation, no right to speak. I dare not speculate. This time, even the nitpicker, Emil Field, did not speak. He just lowered his head, thinking. Thinking of Emilfield's light energy cannon aimed at the beast-type mecha warrior, combined with his current performance, Song-si suspected that this guy knew something, but unfortunately he had no evidence. Song-si couldn't do anything to Emilfield for the time being, but it didn't mean that he couldn't learn and imitate him. Since the light energy cannon can work on beast-type mecha warriors, he will equip his brothers with light energy cannons. Anyway, this thing comes from Tang's mecha. And now, right now, the head of Tang's mecha is standing right in front of him. As for the materials of the light energy cannon and the energy stones to activate the light energy cannon, as a major general of the alliance and the man behind the Duke of Rose, the energy stones in the hands of Major General Song-si are not necessarily less than those of Emilfield, the energy stone merchant. Besides, he has Tang Fan by his side. This little girl who takes one step and looks 3 steps ahead and never fights an unprepared battle, since she dares to take Tao Qingxi to create an unknown field alone, she must have sufficient preparation. Therefore, Major General Song-si did not hesitate to extend his evil hand to Miss Tang Fan. Faced with the fact that Song-si wanted her to provide materials and energy stones, and also wanted her to work on modifying the mecha, Tang Fan felt deeply desperate. Although she had the note written by Major General Song-si himself, which stated that she would pay back 4 times the original amount, as well as the detailed loan details, Miss Tang Fan still felt that she had suffered a great loss. As a result, Miss Tang Fan, who was so busy that she had no time to rest, would not show a good face to Song-si every time she saw him for a long time. In this regard, Song-si could only smile bitterly. He seemed to be going further and further in the matter of chasing his wife. It was all the fault of that damn Gymfield. When he catches this guy one day, he will definitely arrange a year of one-on-one ideological and political education classes for him to let him know what it means that the interests of the alliance are above all else. Absolutely not. Chapter 445 You are awesome. The entire alliance called Tang Fan the Tang Master, and they all knew that Tang Fan had a talent for mecha design and casting, but few people knew Tang Fan's true strength. So, when Song-si asked all his subordinates to take turns to hand over their mechas to Tang Fan for modification, many people, including the personal guards, did not understand and were emotional. The only one who cooperated was Song Tong, who had a thorough understanding of Tang Fan. However, when everyone saw Song Tong's modified mecha, their attitude immediately changed 180 degrees. What's the point of slapping in the face? Anyway, everyone can't escape the law of true fragrance. And the eldest brother doesn't talk about the second brother. The mighty and domineering light energy cannon directly mounted on the shoulder, directly fired, no preparation is required, and the charging time is 35% less than that of Emilfield's. Not to mention Song-si's personal guards, even Emilfield's subordinates ran over to join in the fun. However, these people were not surprisingly pulled out one by Tang Fan and thrown out. There is no way. Although the mechas of the guards are of different models, they are all designed by Tang Fan. How can the military mechas specially made by Tang's mechas be the same as the common ones that can be bought everywhere? For the sake of Song Yuanqi, Marshal Song, Ms. Yao and Song-si, it is okay to suffer a little loss reluctantly. It is not certain whether the people from Cheyenne-Soho Star are enemies or friends. Why? Not only Tang Fan saw the difference between the mechas of both sides, but even Ms. Tao Qingxi showed an expression of sudden enlightenment after seeing the mechas of Song-si. In order to shut Ms. Tao Qingxi's mouth, the people under Major General Song-si took a lot of effort. The animals of Wuru Star were completely in trouble. After repeatedly confirming the variety and edibility, it became sharp pepper, spicy, pickled pepper, pan-fried, dry pot, boiled, pepper and salt, spicy, vine pepper, young ginger, pickled cabbage, dry or roasted, sweet and sour. The meat was served in front of Tao Qingxi. The chef, naturally, Miss Tang Fan, who took time out of her busy schedule. However, this girl also ate a lot. A man who eats from others will be grateful, and a man who takes from others will be soft-handed. Tao Qingxi's mouth was blocked, but Emilfield's dissatisfaction was difficult to control. Of course, Song-si did not intend to control it. He promised Tang Fan that he would return 4 times what he borrowed. If he did not bite off a piece of meat from Emilfield, how could he report to Tang Fan when he returned? Just relying on his monthly salary? Dreaming. As for writing a report to the higher-ups, that was even more impossible. Emilfield, the largest energy stone merchant in the alliance, became a big fat sheep in Song Si's eyes. It is said that the business world is like a battlefield. Major General Song Si was able to sit in the position he is in today and make Tang Fan, a businessman, suffer a loss. Naturally, he has no lack of business skills. It is not too big to be noisy, but it is just a basic operation. Fanning the flames and adding fuel to the fire are just average performance. Seeing the more trouble Emil Field was making, Song Si's smile became brighter. After modifying more than 20 mechas, Tang Fan, who was just about to take a break, was overwhelmed by new orders before she could even breathe a sigh of relief. Seeing the batch of mechas that she had returned to her were brought back to her by Song Si herself, she realized that her business had been taken away from her. She looked at Song Si with anger in her eyes. Song Si, you're great. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 446 Unfair. Seeing Tang Fan's furious look, Song Si couldn't help but take a half step back. The energy stone that had just been taken out of Emil Field's hand and had not yet been warmed up was piled in front of her consciously. For the safety of your life and property and that of others, the modification of the mecha will be put on the agenda sooner or later. In this case, it is better to maximize the benefits. Tang Fan glanced at Song Si and sneered, that's right. But it depends on who gets the maximized benefits. Song Si took a half step back and laughed dryly. Who's with whom? The two of us. Tang Fan raised his eyebrows and said nothing. Men's mouths are deceitful. From Tang Gang to Song Si, no matter how old they are, the words they say are really unbelievable. It's just that they bully her because she is soft-hearted. This time, she will not compromise no matter what. Even if the energy stone is right in front of her, it won't work. Looking at the little girl with her arms around her chest and looking at him warily, Song Si sighed silently. The child has grown up, and it's hard to coax him. I'm not trying to steal your food. It's just that in this place where no one lives and no one lays eggs, we have no place to make money except Emil Field, the sucker. When we leave this place, I will fight wherever you point to in the entire league. Let's join forces and make a fortune. At that time, what's yours is yours, and what's mine is still yours, okay? Tang Fan raised his eyelids, glanced at Song Si who was spitting, and said nothing. Seeing Tang Fan's determined look, Song Si touched his nose and made concessions again helplessly. It's time-consuming and laborious to modify the mecha, and I can't let you lose the materials. This batch of mechas is my job anyway, so all the costs are on me. According to the contract we signed, I'll pay you back 4 times the price, okay? Tang Fan raised his head and swept the energy stone in front of him into a space button, and then slowly uttered 2 words, deal. Song Si, who had been busy for many days and was doing everything for others, looked at the little girl playing with the energy stone in front of him. Not only did he not feel dissatisfied, but he thought the little girl's greed for money was particularly cute. It was not until the energy stone was needed to start the mecha that Song Si realized what a stupid thing he had done, and then he signed a series of unequal treaties with Tang Fan. Of course, this is all later. Anyway, before the arrival of the beast-type mecha warriors, the 40 or 50 people in Wei Rui Star, without exception, all had the powerful weapon of light energy cannon. However, most people just took it and enjoyed it. After all, everyone in the alliance knew how expensive this thing was. Only they themselves know how many energy stones they have. Wealth is always in the hands of a few people. 90% of the people hold 20% of the energy stones. 80% of the energy stones are in the hands of 10% of the people. This means that Emil Field, Song Si and Tang Fan can launch several rounds of indiscriminate fire coverage. Even if the accuracy is not good, after several rounds of continuous blasts of energy cannons, there will be no survivors within a radius of 10 miles. The rest of the people can only make a precise strike to save their lives at the most critical moment. What is the same person with different fate? This is it. If you have any opinions, just raise them. If you change it, I'll lose. With energy stones, you can be so willful. Chapter 447 Warning. Faced with such an unfair situation, no one protested. At least on the surface, that's what it looked like. The expeditionary army was organized, disciplined, and had a strict reward and punishment system, so this kind of performance was normal. But on Field's side, Song-si always felt that the way they looked at him, Tang Fan, and even Tao Qingxi was not quite right. In order to prevent it from happening, Song-si approached Tang Fan and suggested that she move next door to him. Tang Fan thought about the increasingly explicit looks of the people under Field, hesitated for only a few seconds, and then readily agreed. Ms. Tao Qingxi also realized her situation. When Tang Fan moved, she actively approached Song-si and submitted an application to move to the dormitory. Song-si happily agreed and threw her to Song-tong as a roommate. It was called, learning from each other and promoting each other. Tao Qingxi, who was clearly arranged, smiled bitterly and immediately had a deeper understanding of the 5 words same person, different fate. There's nothing I can do. Who made her childhood sweetheart so weak? Not to mention taking care of herself, it was already good enough that she didn't cheat on him. After all, the Field family had a lot of bad records. However, when Tao Qingxi turned her head and saw Xiaodao's sad eyes, all her dissatisfaction disappeared immediately. Ms. Tao Qingxi smiled and walked towards Song-tong, and greeted her new roommate in a friendly manner. When she successfully abducted the little girl with a genetic project, feeling Xiaodao's eyes that were about to turn into a real knife, Ms. Tao Qingxi's little bit of bad taste was successfully satisfied. Xiaodao's look of "you can't stand me, but you can't get rid of me" made Ms. Tao Qingxi very satisfied. In order to stimulate Xiaodao, Ms. Tao Qingxi threw out projects one by one without hesitation, took out unprecedented patience, and seriously implemented the 8-character policy of Major General Song-si. In just half a month, Song-tong went from a novice in genetics to half professional. Just as Song-tong was running towards the road of professionals, a roadblock suddenly appeared. The Field's team that Song-si had been guarding against had not yet been dispatched, but the beast-type mecha warriors appeared first. At 3 o'clock in the morning, when humans were most tired, the glasses on duty unexpectedly discovered 2 groups of beast-type mechas one after the other. Glasses immediately triggered the first-level warning device. In an instant, the shrill alarm sounded throughout the entire Weirui Star, and the red light of the alarm illuminated the northern hemisphere of Weirui Star at the same time. No matter how free and undisciplined the Field's team was, 3 minutes later, everyone, including Ms. Tao Qingxi, who was a scumbag, appeared in the open space next to the station fully armed. The infrared scanner once again played its due role, and 18 red dots appeared in front of everyone without exception. Fighting is certain. But how to fight has become an imminent problem. At this moment, everyone's eyes were focused on Song-si. As the backbone, Song-si slowly scanned everyone's faces, memorized everyone's expressions, and then slowly spoke. In the history of the Expeditionary Army, there has never been the word surrender. When friends come, there is good wine. If a wolf of wealth comes, there is a shotgun to welcome him. No matter who the opponent is, since they are here, I have no intention of letting them go. It's just right to make up for the research materials that Tao Qingxi and Tang Fan are missing. Chapter 448 Target. Tang Fan glanced at Major General Song-si, who was talking nonsense in a serious manner, and a trace of contempt flashed in his eyes. If you didn't take the 7 level 2 energy stones from me, I might have believed your lies. Ms. Tao Qingxi stared at the 18 red dots without moving. Just when Song-si was about to assign the next task, Tao Qingxi suddenly spoke. Afan, do you think there is anything wrong with the distribution of these mechas? Tao Qingxi's words not only successfully drew Tang Fan's attention away from Song-si, but also attracted the attention of Song-si and Glasses. As an outstanding graduate of the command department of the Blue Sea Mecha Academy, Song-si only glanced at it and immediately grasped the key point. The 18 mechas are obviously 2 echelons. The first echelon has a total of 9 mechas, and 3 mechas form a combat group, forming a triangular attack formation, with a clear division of labor for attack cover support. The second echelon, which is obviously also 9 mechas, is distributed in a circle, with no formation at all. Song-si's heart moved slightly, and she stretched out her right hand to Tang Fan. Lend me the drone. Thinking of the drone that Glasses had gone and never returned, Tang Fan couldn't help but hesitate. Song-si glanced at her, raised 3 fingers unhappily, and swore, I swear in the name of the Expeditionary Army, I will return 4 times the amount of the one I borrowed, and I will pay 3 times the damage. Tang Fan gritted his teeth and finally handed his drone to him. The drone approached the other party at a very fast speed against the wind. Through its own video equipment, a team of 18 beast-type mechas soon appeared in front of everyone. Although their distribution was no different from that in the scanner, it was not completely consistent. In the middle of the 9 mechas distributed in a circle at the back, there was something that Song Si and all his brothers knew and hated. Tang Fan slowly closed his eyes and uttered a few words from between his teeth. It's actually a worm nest, it's already the interstellar age, and everyone is an adult. Haven't eaten pork, but have you seen pigs run? The same goes for this. If you haven't seen a worm nest, how could you not have heard of one? In an instant, many people, including Emil Field, changed their expressions to doubt life. Of course, there are still people who will not give up until they see the Yellow River. Look, classmate Kyasu Kameo put forward his own opinion. The infrared scanner did not respond at all. How could it be a worm nest? In response, Major General Song Si Song did not explain, but just winked at classmate Zaya Adeo. Zaya Adeo gave Kyasu Kameo an amiable smile, then picked up his collar and threw it in the direction of the beast-type mecha warrior. Although Kyasu Kameo also knew that with the physical fitness of the alliance, it was impossible to throw another person out of the atmosphere, he still couldn't help but scream. As Kyasu Kameo's direct leader, Emil Field, who was thicker than the city wall, couldn't help blushing when he heard the scream. As for the other people around him, they wished they had never met Kyasu Kameo. Zaya Adeo patted his hands, sneered, and hid his merits and fame. The culprit behind all this, Major General Song Si, had already commanded the top snipers in his personal guard to set up light energy cannons in 3 rows, aiming directly at the huge insect nest. Chapter 449, Face. Seeing Song Si calmly controlling the situation and not taking him seriously from beginning to end, Emil Field's fists could squeeze out water. But thinking about the rumors about the insect nest, looking at Zaya Adeo who was staring at him, and Tao Kingxi who seemed to be smiling, Emil Field's clenched fists slowly loosened. A man who knows the times is a hero, which has always been a fine tradition of the Field family. Those who achieve great things are not particular about trivial matters. To endure what ordinary people cannot endure. Emil Field drank a big bowl of chicken soup, and then he resisted the urge to open his mouth to retort Song Si. Of course, he was also very glad that he resisted. Especially after seeing Song Si commanding the sniper to use the light energy cannon to aim at the thing called the insect nest and firing 3 rounds of shots. Seeing the circular object with a diameter of 20 meters turned into cosmic dust, none of the 9 mechas guarding the left and right were intact. Emil Field was so lucky, his limbs were weak and his back was cold. At this time, Major General Song Si turned his head and smiled at him evilly, almost killing Emil Field. Seeing Emil Field's cowardly look, Miss Tao Kingxi couldn't help but sneer. Then, she shouted at Major General Song Si without fear of death, "You should aim at the right spot and leave a whole body. How can you do research when it is destroyed like this?" Tang Fan glanced at her and said unhappily, "If you can do it, you can do it. If you can't, shut up and don't interfere with others' mission. You can take the materials if you want, but don't send them all to my room." "I don't mind." Tao Kingxi refused to do it when she heard this. The 2 partners quarreled over research materials for the 101st time, and the building was tilted smoothly. But it doesn't matter. They will soon reconcile because of a meal. If 1 meal can't solve this conflict, then 2 meals? Without Tao Kingxi, an outsider, pointing fingers at her, Major General Song Si's burden was much lighter. There were only 9 mecha beast mechas. With the data support of glasses and the full cooperation of the snipers, Major General Song Si took only 3 minutes to defeat them all. Although it took longer than the second echelon captain, the completeness was also higher than that of the second echelon, and it also successfully triggered a battle between Miss Tao Kingxi and Miss Tang Fan. After 102 times of arguing, the 2 people who successfully divided the spoils finally dragged their research materials into their respective rooms with satisfaction. After watching the 2 girls leave, Major General Song Si walked towards Emil Field with a smile, and skillfully hooked his neck, and said with a smile, "Let's talk." Emil Field remembered the previous conversations he had with Song Si, and couldn't help but tremble, almost wanting to run away. With an excited heart, he pointed at Song Si with a trembling finger and said in grief and indignation, "What do you want to do again?" The last word was still floating in the air, but Emil Field's people had been hooked away by Song Si. Target, Glass's room. There is no way. Our Major General Song Si's room is no longer exclusive to him. We don't know if it is suitable for love or not, but it is definitely not suitable for conversation. Especially not suitable for our Major General Song to talk with people like Emil Field. After all, Our Major General Song Si is also a person who cares about his reputation. At least, in front of Miss Tang Fan, he still has to have some face. Chapter 450, Deterrence. Driving for a few hours, the whole group was wiped out in a few minutes. Song Si's operation not only successfully shocked the restless Emil field, but also shocked the group of people who commanded the beast-type mecha warriors. The two completely different battles before and after made them confused. The entire command room fell into silence for a long time. After a long time, a mechanical synthesized voice was heard slowly. What do you think? Feel free to speak freely. The people have arrived at our door. If you don't speak now, you will never have another chance to speak. Even if the mechanical voice encouraged them to speak, they silently fell silent when they saw the 18 dim light groups and the transparent special nutrition cabin. Everyone knows the principle of shooting the bird that sticks out. The brothers in the 18 special nutrition cabins in front of them are their lessons. Seeing that everyone has become a turtle, Solomon Burke gently brushed the special nutrition cabin in front of him and spoke. No one wants to talk, so let me say a few words. Although I am the youngest among all the people present, my own body knows that my needs are as urgent as everyone else's. Between a young body and a cold nutrition cabin, I choose the former. In the case of supply emergency, this group of young people must be captured. No matter what the cost, Solomon Burke's emphasis made the last sentence particularly meaningful. Zhao Jin, who was sitting next to him, slowly closed his eyes and uttered a sentence from between his teeth. We don't have many people anymore. Solomon Burke raised his eyebrows and sneered. So what? We have to be cautious and divide the planet with those little guys. Just keep wasting time like this? Consume until your mental power collapses and disappears in this vast sea of stars? Don't you see how many of you here can afford it? A stone stirs up 1,000 waves. Solomon Burke's words successfully made the command center boil. Everyone looked at Zhao Jin with a bit of displeasure and condemnation. They were all well-known figures in the Alliance. Why did they abandon everything in the Alliance and follow Jim Field to this barren place? They were hoping to live longer. After following Jim Field for so many years, immortality has become their obsession. As long as they can survive, they can pay any price. Robots, genetically modified people, or take over. For the so-called immortality, they have already lost their bottom line. Anyone who wants to burst their bubble-like dreams is an enemy of them and will inevitably suffer their ruthless counterattack. Solomon Burke seized this point and successfully isolated him from the opposite side of others. If it weren't for his little role, Zhao Jin believed that Solomon Burke would never stop here. He would give full play to the charm of language and throw him into the ocean of people's struggle, leaving him dead without a burial place. Just like the 18 groups of spiritual power trapped in the special nutrition cabin, dim to the point of almost disappearing. They were all brothers who had fought together in the past, but a few words from Solomon Burke had made them look like this. If they succeeded, it was natural. If they failed, Zhao Jin thought about the outcome they were about to face, and tears flashed in his eyes. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.